Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me again for a conversation with a friend of mine. Someone who I've not done a show with in over a year now, I think. It is the Carnal Conservative, my good buddy. How are you doing today, sir?
It's been too long, Yizz. It's been too long. Distance does make the heart grow fonder, or absence makes the heart grow fonder, as they say. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's just one of those weird things where it's been too long. Like we agree on a lot, we disagree on some, and as you might hear in the background, I have childrens. I have childrens, and they are playing
Your little
Minecraft.
children's.
Yeah, and you
Well,
will
hey, I
hear.
think that's great. I don't want to edit those out or change your audio settings because I want to encourage everyone who listens to us to think children are great and they should have a lot more white babies.
Yes, has childrens, has lots of childrens.
And I say white babbies, but I just mean babbies in general. It's funny. It's funny how often that I have to bring up race now because it wasn't until just a few years ago that I even cared at all about race or ethnicity. It's sort of, it reminds me of the old Gamergate meme of the Gamergate SS trooper throwing the furry into the gas chamber and said, and with the meme of, I just wanted to play video games. This is your fault, type of thing.
Yeah,
That's the way I feel now about having to care about race. It's like I never wanted to care about race. I just wanted to be a part of a functional constitutional republic that had good national values. But now it's all about race and class and sex and gender and all this other mess.
Well, this was the battle they wanted to fight. These are the terms they wanted to fight under. So,
Apparently.
this is the paradigm they chose. It's not like we came out swinging with full hood on with I mean it, the hood is now in vogue because you have to wear a mask to the store. But I'm
Yeah, that was hilarious. I saw about that guy who
in
wore the hood
California.
for a mask.
In
Yeah,
California, God bless.
that was pretty great. That was epic troll right there.
Yes, but
If unless do you have more to add before we get into the meat of what we're going to be handling tonight?
um, what was it? Well, back on race, like I was reflecting on how extreme, like the whole discussion with race and politics has gotten. I
Mm-hmm.
have military family, and
Mm-hmm.
they're good people. Their entire family is pretty much centered on serving in the military. Navy uh, is where they focus on. Let the
Mm-hmm.
jokes commence there, and it's it's strange because we're in a hot contentious thing with the Ahmaud Arbery case, and I had the
Mm-hmm.
audacity to share a Stefan Molyneux video, and apparently, if you Google Stefan Molyneux, the words "white supremacist" are the first things that
Yeah.
pop up.
Of course it does, because that's the problem with having a monopoly on the thought exchange of human beings. My first deep double analysis is about the Overton window and the corporatism that pushes us ever leftward, since Google is basically the primary filter through which Western people get their daily information now.
Hmm.
They purposefully skew things. They'll prioritize articles that fit the narrative while making others disappear. They get completely rid of any nationalistic or hard right-wing voices. They just bury them in the algorithm or purposely trim them from Google searches. And then, of course, they prioritize trash like ADL and SPLC articles
Uh
that
huh.
paints that paints anyone right of Stalin as a neo-Nazi. It's ridiculous.
And it's Steve Bannon got it half right. He said that we're in the post-truth era. I disagree. I don't think we're post-truth. We are post-trust, and
Yes,
rightfully so. We should be
right.
completely very skeptical about anything we get from our search results, and instead um, actually investigate what the claims are. Like you have to. It,
Definitely.
it is so much harder now to know what the hell is going on and to see who stands for what.
About a year and
Because
a half ago, I went to using DuckDuckGo as my search browser, and about a year ago, I started comparing it with what was on Google. And in the last year, DuckDuckGo search about anything political or any mainstream news it has gotten progressively more and more different and to use their word, radicalized towards the narrative. And DuckDuckGo, like if you search for topics, you'll get stuff from right-wing, left-wing, centrist, international, American sources, and it's not just the railroaded narrative of content that Google wants to program your mind with.
And that's scary that people can't trust what is commonplace in their lives, and it's very discombobulating. I'll be honest, I still use Google because it's most convenient. It's what everyone else uses. But my God, the way I have to word my search engine is ridiculous. Like, I have to get incredibly specific.
I've just stopped using Google altogether unless I'm doing a comparison video or I want to see what the narrative has to say. Pretty much what I do is if there's a news story or something about anything having to do with global warming or immigration, I'll use DuckDuckGo as my control group. And then to see what the opposition has to say, I just search for the same shit on Google. and that feeds me what I need to know that is probably lies and what I should say something about. So that's how I use Google.
Well, that's a smart technique. As I say, we're post-trust. We need to question pretty much. And it's disturbing because not only do we have to distrust what we see now, the question is, how long has this been going on? How long?
It's been going on for a long time now.
I know, and we're just waking up to it, but you can go back as far as the 70s and the 80s with all this garbage. And it's disturbing because even recently they came out with the hoax papers where leftist academics submitted hoax papers where they did insane studies about consent in the dog park, or no, rape culture in the dog park.
I wouldn't call those people leftists. I think that they are more maybe just left-leaning. I wouldn't call them leftists, but they definitely were academics that worked in the university sphere. So
exactly.
Probably left-leaning of some kind.
When I call them leftists, I should be far more precise. That they are. They consider themselves left-leaning. They're part of the institutions they're criticizing, and even they've come to the conclusion that they are, and this is their exact phrase, or I'm paraphrasing it, religiously and dogmatically insane.
Yes. That's a very fun read if you want to look into it. I believe they weren't they stationed in Portland or Seattle? It was definitely one of the West Coast cities. I think it was Portland.
I think one was focused in, at least one was in Portland, and the other ones I think were spread throughout the United States when they tested getting these papers into academic journals.
Yeah, lots of them were accepted. I remember
that. It's disturbing how many did, especially when one of them was just a rewording of a chapter of Mein Kampf.
Yeah, I remember that one too. They reworded Mein Kampf, which of course was about the danger of Jews or whatever, and they replaced it. Wasn't it with just white men? Isn't that what they replaced it with?
White men, white fragility. If you replaced whatever buzzword it was that Hitler used with white fragility, it justified the oppression of white people based on their white fragility.
Yes, I remember that paper, and that one got approved too. That got approved for academic review and circulation. It's just nuts. It just goes to show you how ridiculous things have gotten.
Yeah. So
segueing from that, you were the one that picked the topic for our discussion tonight. So why don't you let the viewers, or the listeners, I should say, because this is a podcast, let our listeners know what our topic's going to be tonight, please.
Well, the topic here is, I had a black pill moment when it comes to the concept of using the law in its educational function, meaning that society, whether we like it or not, is informed by the laws and the legal precedents of that society. And it seems that the left is willing to use it, but my side isn't. And that to me is disheartening because it's a front on the culture war we can't ignore. And even the Trump presidency reflects this when he is stalking the court system, albeit very quietly,
Mm-hmm.
with conservative judges, with strict constitutionalists. And I hope that makes a massive difference. But the fact that we are not,
Well,
go ahead.
Not to speak ill of the right here, but I'm not a fan of Judge Kavanaugh. I defended the shit out of him whenever he was attacked, but when it comes to how he's adjudicated, he's very much in line with the neocon, let's spy on our own people type of stuff. He's very much a statist Big Brother type, at least looking at how he's adjudicated in the past. While I do think he's probably a better choice than some leftist shill of a judge, he's not exactly my guy, so to speak.
Oh,
but
no, and
please continue.
And in that regard, I mean, there's plenty to criticize him on, and I'll be honest, when it comes to national security, that is important, but my focus is on our social interactions and the social norms that we adopt. And that is the educational aspect of the law that we have neglected and that we're not pushing hard enough on. And it seems that it's just another weapon of the left that the right refuses to pick up. And I find that very disconcerting.
Problem with leftism in general, and if you'll allow me to speak for a moment.
Oh, go ahead.
One of the things that I got into it with someone on a live stream, I won't mention who, but just 2 days ago on a live stream, I think it was Friday, it was either Friday or Thursday or Friday, I was talking to someone about the ever encroaching by any means necessary mess that the left has used for the last several generations. Mm-hmm. I was looking at the writings that came from the Frankfurt School back in the early portions of the Great War era in the 1900s, moving up towards the Cultural Revolution. I don't appreciate the methods through which the McCarthy era witch hunt for commies used, but I understand their goal. I understand their fear because they saw what was happening, like we see what's happening now. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is even looking at the literature that was behind university leftism back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, even then they were talking about the ugliness of heterosexuality and the patriarchal norm of the nuclear family. They were wanting to sexualize children or have sexual liberation with children, talking about letting your children be naked with you when you have family group meetings with other families, just all kinds of degeneracy. And This is not something new. A lot of people on the right seem to think this is new. No, this has been slow rolled on us for the last 3 or 4 generations. It's just coming to a crescendo now because my generation, the Gen X and the millennials, your generation, the one that came after us, has basically been fully indoctrinated from primary education forward with this shit. And just like Yuri Bezmenov warned us about back in the 70s and 80s, the mind poison of this institutional leftism is almost impossible to purge out of people. It's almost impossible. And when you pair that with the standing on principles of now when I say libertarian or liberal here, I don't mean it in the modern stupid sense. I mean it in the old 1800s sense. America is based, especially the constitutionalist, what I consider to be normal right-wing American, is very much steeped in ethical values of the individual Western way based on British common law and our Constitution. And as such, they don't and have never ascribed to the by any means necessary motto of leftism. They do stand on ethical and religious values. They stand on playing by the rules and playing fair. Mm-hmm. That's why I believe for the last 4 generations, we, meaning regular right-wing Americans, have been constantly losing ground decade by decade because we'll stand on principle, and sort of like how the leftists have their version of not in my backyard type of lefties, that's sort of the ethical moral version on our side of, well, at least I got my principles, even though, the streets are full of, dildo-wearing pride marchers and drag queens are showing their dicks to your kids at libraries. At least you're standing on your principles. Yeah, well, how good are your principles going to be when the whole country collapses? So exactly. That's why I've had a lot of malcontent with even mainstream politicians that I think might mean well beneath the veneer and the lies that they have to spin, they're
Mm-hmm.
ineffective. Like, I can't name a single thing that conservatives in America have conserved in 50 years. I can't name a single thing that they've actually conserved.
You're
Can you?
not wrong, but can I speak as to sort of the philosophical foundation of where that comes from? And
Certainly, please.
in talking with not just the right, but the religious in terms of enforcing cultural and social norms,
Mm-hmm.
potentially in the law or just in your just in a more firm manner. Their reluctance actually comes from two philosophers, Saint Augustine and Thomas Aquinas.
Mm-hmm.
And what is curious is that the ethos of these men come from the fact that they were men of the cloth. They were men of religious thought. They were religious leaders, and they were supposed to have this ethos,
Catholic
this
priests.
authority in terms of righteous behavior and religious sentiment. And
Mm-hmm.
when I looked over their justifications for permitting things like prostitution, um, Thomas Aquinas follows Saint Augustine in the sentiment that, well, we have to permit prostitution because if we don't let the small masses have their vices, then it'll just blow everything up. Well, it'll be like a house without a latrine. There'll be shit all over the place. But
It's
if
very
you
wise.
it, it's wrong though. If you look at uh, the biblical justification for the law that was given, uh, it was very specific. What it said was, "Thou shalt not permit your daughter to play the whore, lest you essentially become a nation full of whores."
When I say that it's wise, I just mean there has to be a sieve to let off pressure. Just like how the more you try to control a market, an economy, the more that the criminal element rises to power. That's why almost every socialist or strong authoritarian country that tries to firmly from the top down control its market sees a massive spike in organized crime, just like we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing in Mexico. So the the reason I think it's wise is because I don't think that a society based on Christian values should try to use authoritarian statism to enforce those values. But this is where the conundrum comes in. Because we have socially lost ground and had our social fabric and morals destroyed by leftism, which is anti religious, which is anti God,
Mm-hmm.
I believe that we're going to have to take a more forceful hand in getting back normalcy.
Well,
Because,
allow me to introduce a bit of
go ahead.
nuance.
Sure, please.
There's a reason why I framed this dilemma in a particular way as the educational um, use of the law. It's mostly educational. Like, for example, enforcing prostitution, even though it's illegal, is practically impossible.
Right.
Which gives it almost a pseudo illegal status. Like, you can be a prostitute, but getting caught at it, very, very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, it is reasonable to suppose that perhaps the law's true function is to educate society as to what is good and bad behavior. That's what I mean when it comes to enforcing these values and using the law
See.
as an educational notion.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the problem though: is what does the law teach our society today, and we can see how it's affecting our populace. It's not we've gotten one of the major examples of this is abortion, which has never been popular,
Right.
never. Yet it was shoved down our throats without a vote, without any.
It started back in the 70s with safe, legal, and rare.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
remember safe, legal and rare.
I
what
do.
what
I very
what
much do.
I.
What a novel idea by today's standards, huh?
Oh, I know. Like there was we had a post in the Liberalist where a female student submitted a project where she alleges that she would impregnate herself by a sperm bank, sperm donor, and then she would herbally take a concoction that would force her to miscarry or abort or something of that nature, like 28 days later. And she stored all of the remains in a tube and wanted to present this as a art piece.
That is peak Weimar Republic degeneracy right there.
Now, the reason why it was controversial, believe it or not, is because Yale told her to get the fuck out. They rejected it.
When and where was this?
Oh, it was. I think it's 2013 case.
Okay, so that's fairly recent then. Okay.
I'll send you the link to it as soon as we're done done chatting. But I heard the storm like, and it was a big deal. Like in the liberals, the discussion is should this be allowed? And I'm like, well, obviously not. No one said safe, legal, and rare, and for your art pieces.
Exactly. It's terrible.
No one said, hey, let's. I'm officially referring to the slippery slope as Schrodinger's fallacy.
Abortion is a very difficult issue for me when it comes to the legality and the application. I obviously don't like abortion ethically. Obviously, it's not good. But when it comes to how you can possibly adjudicate that or prevent that with laws and police or state force, much like prostitution, it's so difficult. It's practically not worth the effort because, like I was talking about, taking a firm control of the economy just leads to black market. I don't think that we need to, with state force, stop abortion because that's only going to force people who already are going to get abortions into getting them in less safe environments, and it's going to lead to more problems. That's why instead of trying to attack the laws or make it illegal now, I think fighting the cultural battle is the smarter way to go there.
I'm going to slightly disagree with that.
Well, just give me a second.
Okay.
Because I think we need to win culturally and create a cultural revolution to go back to some type of, because America is a center-right country. It really is. Most people, even still today, are center-right or more than center-right leaning. Most Americans are. And if we can defeat the multinational media boss and defeat the leftist boss, then I think it'll be much easier to walk back the massive numbers of abortions that are being performed because we can start fighting it culturally. And the reason that I don't think I'm not saying that I don't want to fight abortion legally. I just don't want to yet. I don't think we're there yet. Just like how I'm an ANCAP at heart, but I don't want to try to start breaking down the state and getting rid of the military yet, because if we start doing that now, then other statist powers are just going to steamroll us and take away what we have. So it's sort of like a crime of necessity or an evil of necessity. I think coming down hard legally on abortion is low on the totem pole when it comes to things that we need to prioritize in our attack to take back our nation. Now, go ahead with what you were going to say, please.
Well, I'm just going to slightly disagree with them and provide a little perspective on it. I think America is more than able and willing to accept a paradigm, a world, a legal structure in which abortion is completely illegal. I think that's what they want. And
agree with you.
Now,
I agree with you.
Now,
I'm just saying that I think that there are more important things to focus on with our cultural revolution needs.
But you brought up concerns about women who would seek abortions anyway. There was a major expose by one of the original activists for abortion. And later on in his life, when he became Catholic, he revealed that the statistics that they would cite for justifying abortion, that there were like 50,000 women dying a year for back alley abortions, they were completely bullshit.
Well, then perhaps if I reviewed numbers and statistics and what is true and false about what I've learned, then I might actually agree more with you. So those of you listening, don't quote me as the stance that I just took being a well-educated and erudite stance, because I have not thoroughly studied abortion, and I haven't studied it at all for many years. So perhaps with what you know, I might actually change my stance to be more in tune with you, to where we need to reprioritize it and put it high on the totem pole. So I stand to be possibly corrected and change my view on that.
And in fact, if you look at his confession and the numbers that he posts, abortion, like back alley abortion deaths, never rose to more than it never breached 300 a year, as opposed to what they were publishing
for the entire United States.
For the entire United States, no more
That's
than.
definitely a lot lower than what I remember reading. I remembered it in the thousands every year.
Oh yeah, it was absolutely infinitesimal in compared to what they were reporting. And what that shows us is that when abortion is taken off the table, women want their children. Women are relieved when that option is taken off, and it puts society in a gear so that we now have to focus on other things, like, taking care of the children, taking care of the woman, making sure that there is a stable provider for her, and that is a far more wholesome. Go on.
I'm obviously in favor of all that stuff, just so you know.
Okay.
And if I'm wrong about the things I've read, which of course I probably am, knowing how much everything that I've been taught the last 40 years is lies, if it is true that it is not like outlawing a vice, like cigarettes or booze or whatever, if the numbers don't add up with that basic line of philosophy when it comes to the criminalization of things and people still doing it anyway, then I would definitely change my stance on it and reprioritize making abortion completely illegal, more in line with what it used to be a long time ago. I would be a much stronger proponent for that than I am now. So I believe that we've reached a good agreement point on this.
And that's what I mean by social enforcement is, that there are so many topics like this where we have been systematically trained to believe that, if we take any action, we'll create this black market and this massive black market, and that's not necessarily the truth. And we need to investigate and really have trust in the goodness of Western humanity that we have developed in our nations, and really live up to the hope of the lives they want to live in. And
definitely. And I agree with you about most Americans not liking abortion, because every poll I've seen, people who are pro-abortion are very low, regardless of their political leanings. So I definitely don't think abortion is a very popular thing that people like.
Yes, they are.
Your audience might not know this because it's been a year since I've been on your show, but I was a huge, the gay marriage battle was a huge part of my life, because my religious community took a huge stand in it in the state of California. We fought for the vote to have marriage stay between a man and a woman, and we won it twice. And there is a notion today that society changed to accept gay marriage, and that's why it's legal. And that's also wrong. I don't know where they flipped the script on that. I don't know why people forgot that it was a Supreme Court case, never a vote.
Because outside of the leftist bastions like New York City and Los Angeles and Portland, Oregon, the majority of people still, even in 2020, do not like marriage being considered the same legally for same-sex people as it is for traditional coupling.
And here's the strangest thing. I was in California when they rejected gay marriage twice. California rejected it twice.
Yeah, because a large portion of its populace, until massive immigration came in, made the state rather heavily red outside of the cities. And it probably is still that way today.
Oh, and I'll be honest, some of those
And for
immigrants.
those of you that are listening that are not American, the colors are flip-flopped here. In America, red means right and blue means left. I know in other countries it's the opposite, just for those of you that aren't American listening.
True. And what is... Well, oh, this is what I was going to say. I honestly might have to be thanking some of those illegal immigrants because they're probably were a lot more conservative than those who wanted to bring them over.
Yeah, definitely. I think that even though a lot of Latino people that are pumped into the country have more traditional conservative religious values, I'm still sort of confused as to why Latino population, the Latino demographics in America tend to vote left instead of right. That's always been a puzzler for me. Do you think it's just because of a sort of grandfathered in notion of the right is some kind of xenophobic or racist, and so they don't want to vote for them because of the media lies? Do you think that's why?
I think it's two things. One, I think they feel indebted to the Democratic Party for being in the United States. And it might be, and this is just me speculating, there's no data on this, it might be a rejection of their homeland. Them being away from Mexico don't want to have even Mexican values. They want to be independent values. So they might, out of combined loyalty to the DNC, and sort of like a rejection of never wanting to go back to Mexico, despite waving its flag on the weekend. They feel like they even want to reject their foundational Catholic teachings when it comes to because Mexico is largely conservative. Like, people don't know that, but most Mexicans are, in fact, very strongly conservative. In fact, I was very proud when I watched a documentary about Mexican citizens, despite it being illegal to do so, arming themselves and kicking the cartels out of their city, their little village.
I lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico for almost a decade, and I got to meet a lot of Mexican people, both legal and illegal immigrants. And almost all of them had what I would consider to be right-wing, traditional conservative values. But the few that I knew well enough to talk to about voting, they all voted for the DNC. Yeah. And the ones that I asked personally, even though this was only like a dozen people, is because they had the notion that the Republican Party was a party that represented racism and xenophobia, even though I don't think that's true. Like, now maybe a little xenophobia if you want to use a leftist word, but I definitely don't think that the RNC is racist. I think that is just a complete media smear about the RNC.
Well, don't
get me wrong. I'm not a fanboy of the RNC. I don't like either of our political parties, but
same.
But that's a topic for another day. But no, I do think that media lies are heavily complicit in why the massive amount of Central and South American immigrants that come here vote left.
Well, now, when I say the rejection of their foundational Catholic beliefs, that's not necessarily the first generation, fresh from the border immigrant. It's their children who go. It's their children who go to university that feel compelled out of loyalty to the DNC to kind of throw away their traditional roots.
And I think another reason is when you look at immigrants from Mexico and South America, I believe it's either double or triple the number of those families have either complete or what's the word I'm looking for? Either complete or partially funded through welfare programs. And I think that these children that grow up here, having their heads full of low quality public education lies mixed with university lies and media lies, I think that on top of them feeling like welfare good, free market bad, I think that leads second and third generation migrants from Central and South America to vote left. I think it's an economic thing too, because they believe that it is an overall good to have high taxes and lots of welfare programs because they grew up in it and that's all they knew.
Okay, and I completely agree with you. There is a problem with the way how would you call it? It's the pipeline. It's the pipeline from an illegal immigrant to a loyal DNC voter, and it just goes to kind of reinforce kind of what I'm saying about the law being an educational tool, because God knows we don't have education. That's not in our bag of tricks on the right. We don't have any foothold in any educational system.
Not at all.
So we of course have
Which
to
is sad,
look
because
elsewhere.
I wish we did.
You and me both. You and me both. But I'm gonna switch gears just a little bit, just to give
Please.
The audience.
We've reached the half-hour mark, so let's change topics. Let's pick something new. Go ahead.
I'm just gonna switch gears just a little bit about what would you say about making or holding up the sanctity of the American flag? Should burning the flag, if we want to promote nationalism and pride in our nation, and the civic national values that we should have, should burning the flag, defacing it, be illegal?
I think so. I think that's kind of a pedantic thing to argue about, because it's just a piece of cloth. Which ironically, if you hate America and burn the flag, you are ironically exemplifying what the flag stands for, which is your freedom from a state government to keep you from doing what you want to do by creed and ethos, which is what the flag stands for. So I don't like heavy-handed statist things, because I want the state to be a tool of the nation, not the other way around. I want the people who live here to know that at any time they can take a big old dump right on the state government and say, this is crap, I hate it, I don't like it, look at this, I'm burning this flag, I'm crapping on this politician, I hate A, B, C, D, and E about our legislation, and I don't want law to ever say that you cannot do that. I think that is anti-American and anti-Constitution. So I am against sanctioning the destruction of the flag.
Okay, that's fair enough. So this is where we come at an impasse. We agree that it might be good or beneficial to perhaps use the law in this educational manner. The question is, where do we start and where is it appropriate?
Oh, for sure. I get you. I just don't think, like I said in my first sentence, I think it's kind of pedantic and nitpicky about the flag. But you've partially convinced me on the abortion thing, and the more I will go and read about that when we're done. So I might change my mind about criminalization of abortion again. When it comes to other things, though, I'm right there with you. I think we need to heavily enforce and criminalize illegal immigration. We need to actually enforce it and make it worse and punish it. I also think that making the federal I misspoke. I think that as a nation, accepting same-sex partnership as being completely equivalent to traditional marriage is wrong. We should not have done that. I'm not saying that we should never let people of the same sex live together, because you can't stop people from loving each other. You just can't do that. But I think that we shouldn't. I think that with laws, though, there are some things that you need to at least passively enforce, and I think we need to be a lot harder by axing WIC and other welfare programs that subsidize single mothers.
Agreed.
We need to come down harder on that. We need to make both marriage and divorce harder to obtain. We need to make people work harder for those things. And also, I think that when it comes to the raising of children and education, we need to make better both state and federal laws around how and why children need to be educated. And I think that we need to bring back a resurgence of private education and religious education as not being demonized as something stupid or irrelevant.
I am of the very unpopular or popular opinion, based on which side of the internet you're on. The Department of Education just needs to be completely gone.
Maybe not in a sudden way, because I don't want to just leave a vacuum. But one of the primary things on my ladder to ANCAP utopia, one of the primary rungs on that ladder is doing away with public state education, because we have seen for the last 80 years what a travesty public education is. I mean, look at what is it, like only 60% of high school graduates in America can even identify their state on a globe? It's pathetic. It's pathetic. And I just feel like, especially in big cities, like, again, hypocritical left. These leftists in New York, Chicago, Portland, Los Angeles, San Francisco, they have the worst public education. Where even though I don't like it, at least rural public education is usually higher caliber. But city-based is just abysmal. And especially in, like, this is more on the hypocrisy of the left, how they are always, the black community, the Latino community, we have to help, we have to do this. Okay, well, the ghettoification of all these major cities because of these not in my backyard neoliberal types of the last 40 years, the places where the vast majority of the black populace and the Latino populace in America have to live and go to school are dog shit. They get terrible schools. They're not enforced. They live in terrible rundown places. They're government assisted. There's almost no work there, so they're stuck in it forever. It's like a indentured servant class based on your ethnicity, which ironically is sort of what the left champions these days. And these asinine leaders, these asinine leftist leaders in the big cities, they want to make the entirety of the nation like that.
They do.
It's so hypocritical and awful. And I'm surprised that not more Black and Latino people have woken up to this. I'm glad to see more of them are now. And I hope that in the next couple of years we're going to see a big swing away from the DNC. But that's just me hoping. I don't know.
It is a vast hope. But just one more question on the question of enforcing the laws so that it promotes some sort of social cohesion. And I think you would like this one. Making English the official language.
Oh, yes. I want to enforce that everyone in American schools, businesses, everywhere, unless you're in your home or in a community, like a community center or whatever, you are required to only speak English. Yeah. I think that is a binding factor. I think that language is even more of a binding factor than religion, which is like top of the list also.
Agreed. I mean, how ridiculous is it that we cannot expect someone to speak and read our language when it's all we use for every legal document, for road signage? It's just common sense, and yet for some bizarre bullshit reason, they've decided not to enforce that particular standard. And it is these kinds of things that the right really needs to, pick up and, roll up their sleeves and say, we've had enough.
And I'll use Albuquerque, New Mexico as an example again. There is a lot of both legal and illegal immigrants in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And the vast majority of schools, places of business, fast food restaurants, they have staff that don't speak English well or don't speak English at all.
At all.
And it's pathetic because sometimes going to fast food to pick up food for somebody or, picking up breakfast to take into the clinic that I was at a lot, I would swing by to, get a bunch of sausage biscuits or whatever when they were on sale for the team. And I would be greeted at McDonald's in Spanish. And when I would try to order in English, they would have to put me on hold and get someone who spoke English. Like, that right there is pathetic because these young kids that only speak Spanish working at the McDonald's, they didn't move here. They were born here and grew up here. They should speak English.
Oh my
God.
God.
But they're not even expected to speak English for work? What kind of shit is that? Like, that's despicable.
Let me tell you a funny story. When I was little, I grew up in California. They did not have a place for me in a regular preschool class, so they wanted to put me in the bilingual class. And so they wanted to put me in the bilingual class, and my mother just looked him straight in the eye and said, "So he's going to be learning English Italian, right?" Because, we come from a traditional Italian family. So she wanted her culture enforced, and they couldn't accommodate her, so guess what happened? I got put in a regular English class because,
Of course the machine is not going to teach Italian. That's the birthplace of fascism.
They don't want to promote the values of my culture. Fuck them. We're gonna
No,
go where
I'm just kidding about that. I don't think that Italians are fascists. I'm just making a Mussolini joke here.
it's bizarre because I actually, you know what, that will be a topic for another time. I have some family
Okay.
history with that, and it's interesting.
Maybe we'll talk about that the next time we have a conversation. Which, by the way, we should make more often than just once a year. We should do this at least every month or so.
Yeah, because I mean this is good shit. These are
So,
the questions that need to be raised.
when it comes to using laws in the reverse of what we've been led to believe, politics, of course, is downstream of culture. And since politics are what make the laws, one could say, well, Yizz, carnal conservative, aren't your laws downstream from culture? Wouldn't they represent what the culture wants? What is your argument to that standard argument?
I'd say to that standard argument that it seems evident from the leftist tactics that we have seen recently that that's not necessarily the case. That it is demonstrable. It is demonstrable and clear through the past 10 to 20 years that it can go in the reverse, and it often does when it comes to social standards and social norms. The law.
Can you cite me one obvious example of the last 20 years, please?
I've given you two. There is abortion and its prevalence in society, despite being
abortion and gay marriage. Those are good ones.
Those are the top two, and they have shifted. They haven't shifted the hearts and minds of the people, but they've shifted what is acceptable for them to say and do in the public square.
So you're saying that even though it doesn't change people at first, it dramatically hastens the shift of the Overton window to what you can talk about and what the media will cover.
Precisely.
And just like we learned from 1984 and the cyberpunk fiction that we've read growing up, that is the main tool of the Ministry of Truth. That is the main tool of statist and megacorp propaganda. What you were allowed to talk about, what you were allowed to say with the platform.
And my message to conservatives, libertarians, to anyone who is obviously going to instinctively balk at this notion is, yes, it is a tool of the left. Yes, it's dirty. Yes, it is slightly authoritarian in nature. But you need to trust yourselves to be the arbiter of these rules. Because that's ultimately what it comes down to.
Definitely, but I'd like to say something here about libertarian and classic liberal values. I am an ANCAP at heart, or a minarchist, I guess. But I have made my peace in the last year with nationalists, nationalism, and even a little bit of statism, because I think that unless we are willing to use the existing system, the tool of media, and the power of the state to fight against the things that are going to destroy us, we're going to lose no matter what we do. Because if we stand on classic liberal and libertarian values, which, in my opinion, are exemplified by the United States Constitution and the American way, we are going to be outbred and replaced in less than 100 years. So we have to side with nationalists and statists and come down from our libertarian mountain of ethics and values to actually band together and use nationalistic application of state power just for self-preservation at this point. And I don't want to say that I'm a nationalist just out of pragmatism, because I love my nation. I love America. I love the Constitution and what it stands for. And I think that there's a reason why America became the hegemony on planet Earth. I don't think it was just accident. I don't think it was just the luck of the draw. I think that the people who made this nation what it was between 50 and 150 years ago really had something. They really had something. And I think that we need to fight to preserve that and get back what we've lost by any means necessary. And I hate saying that, but it's true, because unless we're willing to take some of that ideology of the left by any means necessary, we're going to lose no matter what we say or what we do. So that's why I'm on board with using the machine against the left. I'm on board with using activism and trying to get people not lose their jobs or anything, but I'm all for using the leftist platforms like Twitter and YouTube and Google against those who are trying to destroy us. So that's why I'm not above these awareness campaigns that try to keep tabs on leftist mouthpieces and Democrats and trying to use Me Too against them and shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel ugly about it, but I feel less ugly about that than just sitting back and watching everything I care about go up in smoke. You know what I mean?
I do, and I have a few words of solace in that regard. You said that the American culture has become homogenic, and that the foundations thereof was that they had something. I forget which founding father said it, but they basically said that this democracy, that this experiment would not survive unless it was built on essentially Christian values. That you need a
I'm
Christian
pretty sure
ethic.
that was Jefferson that said that.
Yeah, you need a Christian ethic to maintain the social fabric of the nation, especially with the liberties that we're given. And there is a tale in the Bible about a prophet.
Mm-hmm.
And this is important because it shows the Christian ethos when it comes to authoritarian power and its use. There is a tale about a prophet who, in the times of a great wickedness, the king had gathered all of the priests and was about to execute them. So what this prophet did is he said, all right, fine, build me 2 altars, and we're going to have a showdown. You try and call your god, and I'll call mine. So they do, and they try to summon their god to accept the offering, and of course, the god doesn't answer. Now, in typical fashion, the prophet calls upon his god, and it not only consumes the offering, it consumes the offering, licks up the water around the offering, and then the prophet and the people slaughter all of the false priests of this wicked king, and then he liberates the prophets in the cave that had been gathered for execution. That is a great show of what can be called authoritarian force. What is curious then...
that's also some pro-Yahweh propaganda, but go on.
But what is even more so curious is what that prophet does after he finishes this task. He goes off and goes by himself and seeks the will of the Lord. He doesn't continue. He doesn't seek more power. He doesn't try to assert himself anymore. He simply did what he had to do to get it done. And that is a Christian ethic. And that is what I wish people would trust themselves to know and have the discernment to do.
Well, I'm right there with you ethically, of rising up when you need to. It's the whole spirit of American Revolution, is you do ugly things to secure what has to be secured, but you do not repeat the ugliness of the ones that you just overthrew. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, in the world that we live in, governments have become these bloated monopostates which control so much, and the system itself needs to recapitulate. I don't want to say self-propagating, but it's built into these massive bureaucracies, the necessity to stay afloat. They will never willingly get rid of laws or disempower themselves. So that's why I am so reticent to want to have some kind of uprising or revolution, because in the last 100 years, every revolution that I can point to, that like the 17 or 18 that I've studied, when the uprising happens, the people that come next are just as authoritarian, if not worse, than what they overthrew. That's why the American Revolution is very unique, because in my opinion, what came afterwards was a boom of freedom and healthy living and Christian values and a lot of great stuff for the Anglo kind that came after the American Revolution.
Well,
it wasn't a Che Guevara or a Pol Pot or whatever. Like, it was actually something great that happened. So that's the kind of thing that I have faith that we can do again, hopefully without any fighting or bloodshed. Hopefully just a cultural revolution is all it'll take.
Well,
but
exactly.
We have to be willing to get our hands bloody, so to speak, when it comes to doing the things that we're ethically against, like, using the media against people or trying to use state power to change the laws to instead of letting the laws be downstream from culture, getting ahead of things and trying to fix the laws because we've had 2 generations of brainwashing from, leftist public schools and shit. So anyway, I guess I should stop talking on that, or I'll blather forever.
Well, I'll just pick up where you left off, and the reason why the American Revolution was so beneficial is because in its heart of hearts, it was not a revolution. Revolutions are generally fought for some future ideal that they have not yet achieved. The American Revolution, by stark contrast, was trying to fight to maintain the degree of happiness they had already made for themselves. And that is the primary difference.
That is a big difference. So in a way, that's what we're fighting for now.
Precisely. And you need to trust in yourself to get it back and to fight for that.
Okay. I think that's a really healthy and positive note to end on. So why don't you tell me some finishing thoughts about that, and then I'll respond and we'll wrap it up.
Well, my finishing thoughts on that are, don't be afraid to assert for the values that you want in society by any means necessary, because at this point, that is precisely what is necessary. And we can, the left and the false idols that they have built for us have failed us again, and we need to hold them to task.
Well, in that I agree, and I've been talking to a few people that are planning different types of armed and unarmed marches and protests for the 4th of July this year, and I'm not going to say where, but I am going to be taking part in one of them. I don't know if I'm going to be armed or not, but I don't know if I want that kind of heat, but I encourage all Americans listening to this right now, meet up with your local right-wing reactionary groups, meet up with your militias, meet up with your people who love freedom, organize, armed if you can, or unarmed if you can't, protests and marches on your state capitals, and even Washington, D.C. itself if you live close enough to do that. Because this 4th of July, all real Americans need to make a stand. We have to make a stand and show that we are going to demand change or else. Because this is America. We hold the guns at the government, not the other way around. That's the way it should be. So that's what I'm going to close with. Thank you for joining me, Carnal Conservative. I always enjoy our talks. Do you want to talk about any radio shows or podcasts or content that you want to shill before we get off here?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Spotify. I'm always the Carnal Conservative, and to everything that has just been said, all I have to say is amen.
Amen, brother. Amen. So I'm going to leave links to the Carnal Conservative's website and social media links in the description below. You can check him out there. And as always, thank you, my loyal Yizraelites. Thank you, newcomers. And thank you to the Carnal Conservatives fans who have come to listen. I hope that all of us can have a better future. And remember, anything worth keeping or worth having is worth fighting for. So stand up for your rights and say no to the government. Let them know that we're the boss of them and they are not the boss of us. Goodbye and God bless.